Okay, this is chapter 6 of The Richest Man of Babylon, or The Richest Man in Babylon. It's called The Tale of the Golden Lender of Babylon. 50 pieces of gold! Never before had Rodan, the spear-maker of old Babylon, carried so much gold in his leather wallet. Happily down the king's highway from the palace of his most liberal majesty he strode. Cheerfully the gold clinked as the wallet at his belt swayed with each step. Cheerfully the gold clinked as the wallet at his belt swayed, with each step the sweetest music he had ever heard. 50 pieces of gold, all his. He could hardly realize his good fortune. What power in those clinking discs! They could purchase anything he wanted: a grand house, land, cattle, camels, horses, chariots, whatever he might desire. What use could he make of it? This evening, as he turned into a side street towards the home of his sister, he could think of nothing he would rather possess than those same glittering, heavy pieces of gold, his to keep. It was upon an evening some days later that a perplexed Rodan entered the shop of Mathon, the lender of gold and dealer in jewels and rare fabrics. Glancing neither to the right nor the left at the colorful articles artfully displayed, he passed through to the living quarters at the rear. Here he found the genteel Mathon lounging upon a rug, partaking of a meal served by a black slave. So Rodan says, "I would counsel with thee, for I know not what to do." Rodan stood stolidly, feet apart, hairy breast exposed by the gaping front of his leather jacket. Mathon's narrow, sallow face smiled a friendly greeting. "What indiscretions hast thou done, that thou shouldst seek the lender of gold? Hast been unlucky at the gaming table? Or hath some lump dame entangled thee? For many years I have known thee, yet never before hast thou sought me to aid thee in thy troubles." And then Rodan responds, "No, no, not such as that. I seek no gold. Instead, I crave thy wise advice." And then Mathon responds, "Hear, hear! What this man doth say! No one comes to the lender of gold for advice. My ears must play me false." Rodan responds, "They listen true." Mathon, "Can this be so? Rodan, the spear-maker, doth display more cunning than all the rest? For he comes to Mathon not for gold, but for advice. Many men come to me for gold to pay for their follies, but as for advice, they want it not. Yet who is more able to advise the lender of gold whom men trouble?" Rodan, then he continues, "Thou shalt eat with me, Rodan," he continued. "Thou shalt be my guest for the evening. Ando," he commanded of the black slave, "draw up a rope from my friend, Rodan the spear-maker, who comes for advice. He shall be mine honored guest. Bring to him much food, and get for him my largest cup. Choose well of the best wine, that he may have satisfaction in the drinking." And then he says to Rodan, "Tell me what troubles thee." And then Rodan responds, "It is the king's gift." "The king's gift? The king did make thee a gift, and it gives thee trouble? What manner of gift?" "Because he was much pleased with the..." And so Rodan responds, "Because he was much pleased with the design I did submit to him for a new point on the spears of the royal guard, he did present me with 50 pieces of gold, and now I am much perplexed. I am beseeched each hour the sun doth travel across the sky by those who would share it with me." And Mathon responds, "That is natural. More men want gold than have it, and would wish one who comes by it easily to divide. But can you not say no? Is thy will not as strong as thy fist? And then Rodin says, to many I can say no, yet sometimes it would be easier to say yes. Can one refuse to share with one's only sister, to whom he is deeply devoted? And Mathron responds, surely thine own sister would not wish to deprive thee of enjoying thy reward. And then Rodin, but it is for the sake of Ahriman, her husband, whom she wishes to see a rich merchant. She does feel that he has never had a chance, and she beseeches me to loan to him this gold that he may become a prosperous merchant and repay me from his profits. And then Mathon responds, my friend, 'tis a worthy subject thou bringest to discuss. Gold bringeth unto its possessor responsibility and a changed position with his fellow men. Let me highlight that. That's a great quote. It bringeth fear lest he lose it, or it be tricked away from him. It bringeth a feeling of power and ability to do good. Likewise, it bringeth opportunities whereby his very good intentions may bring him into difficulties. Didst ever hear of the farmer of Nineveh who could understand the language of animals? I wot not for Okay, Mathon asks Rodin rhetorically, maybe not rhetorically. He asks Rodin, didst ever hear of the farmer of Nineveh who could understand the language of animals? I wot not, for 'tis not the kind of tale men like thee tell over the bronze caster's forge. So I wot not means I think not. I will tell it to thee, for thou shouldst know that to borrowing and lending there is more than the passing of gold from the hands of one to the hands of another. And he continues, this farmer, who could understand what the animals said to each other, did linger in the farmyard each evening just to listen to their words. One evening he did hear the ox bemoaning to the ass the hardness of his lot. And the ox says, I do labor, pulling the plough from morning until night. No matter how hot the day, or how tired my legs, or how the bough doth chafe my neck, still I must work. But you are a creature of leisure. You are trapped with a colorful blanket and do nothing more than carry our master about where he wishes to go. When he goes nowhere, you do rest and eat the green grass all the day. And then Mathon continues the story. Now the ass, in spite of his vicious heels, was a goodly fellow and sympathized with the ox. And the ass says, my good friend, he replied, you do work very hard, and I would help ease your lot. Therefore, will I tell you how you may have a day of rest. In the morning, when the slave comes to fetch you to the plough, lie upon the ground and bellow much, that he may say you are sick and cannot work. And then Mathon continues the story. So the ox took the advice of the ass, and the next morning the slave returned to the farmer and told him the ox was sick and could not pull the plough. And the farmer says, then hitch the ass to the plough, for the ploughing must go on. And the story continues. So all that day the ass, who had only intended to help his friend, found himself compelled to do the ox's task. When night came and he was released from the plough, his heart was bitter, and his legs were weary, and his neck was sore where the bough had chafed it. The farmer lingered in the barnyard to listen. The ox began first, and the ox says, you are my good friend. Because of your wise advice, I have enjoyed a day of rest. And then the ass responds, and I am like many another simple-hearted one who starts to help a friend and ends up by doing his task for him. Hereafter you draw your own plough, for I did hear the master tell the slave to send for the butcher were you sick again. I wish he would, for you are a lazy fellow. I'm not really sure that's very kind of the ass. I mean, now he's understanding what the ox has to deal with. Although I imagine the ox is a bit more strong, so it's easy for him to pull plow. But still, the ass, I don't know. I don't find that story very persuasive, but I understand I understand the point. So anyway, Mathon continues the story. So thereafter they spoke to each other no more, and this ended their friendship. Canst thou tell the moral to this tale, Rodan? And then Rodan says, "'Tis a good tale, but I see not the moral." And then Mathon responds, "I thought not that you would. But it is there, and simple too. Just this: if thou desire to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself." So I'm going to highlight that. And then Rodan responds, "Huh, I had not thought of that. It is a wise moral. I wish not to assume the burdens of my sister's husband. But tell me, you lend to many. Do not the borrowers repay?" Mathon smiled the smile of one whose soul is rich with much experience. And he says, "Could a loan be well made if the borrower cannot repay? Must not the lender be wise and judge carefully whether his gold can perform a useful purpose to the borrower and return to him once more, or whether it will be wasted by one unable to use it wisely, and leave him without his treasure, and leave the borrower with a debt he cannot repay? I will show to thee the tokens in my token chest, and let them tell some of their stories." I'm going to highlight that quote in the other paragraph. It's a good quote. So, into the room, Mathon brought a chest as long as his arm, covered with red pigskin and ornamented with bronze designs. He placed it upon the floor and squatted before it, both hands upon the lid. And then Mathon says, "From each person to whom I lend, I do exact a token for my token chest, to remain there until the loan is repaid. When they repay, I give back. But if they never repay, it will always remind me of one who was not faithful to my confidence." That's a good quote right there. I never thought about that. And so Mathon continues, "The safest loans, my token box tells me, are to those whose possessions are of more value than the loan they desire. They own lands or jewels or camels or other things which could be sold to repay the loan. Some of the tokens given to me are jewels of more value than the loan. Others are promises that if the loan not be repaid as agreed, they will deliver to me certain property in settlement. On loans like those I am assured that my gold will be returned with the rental thereon, for the loan is based on property." And he continues, "In another class are those who have the capacity to earn. They are such as you, who labor or serve and are paid. They have income, and if they are honest and suffer no misfortune, I know that they can also repay the gold I loan them and the rental to which I am entitled. Such loans are based on human effort. Others," and he continues, "others are those who have neither property nor assured earning capacity. Life is hard, and there will always be some who cannot adjust themselves to it. Alas for the loans I make them, even though they be no larger than a pence, my token box may censure me in the years to come, unless they be guaranteed by good friends of the borrower who know him honorable." Mathon released the clasp and opened the lid. Rodan leaned forward eagerly. At the top of the chest a bronze neck-piece lay upon a scarlet cloth. Mathon picked up the piece and patted it affectionately. And he says, "This shall always remain in my token chest, because the owner has passed on into the great darkness. I treasure it, his token, and I treasure his memory, for he was my good friend. We traded together with much success until out of the East he brought a woman to wed, beautiful, but not like our women, a dazzling creature. He spent his gold lavishly to gratify her desires. He came to me in distress when his gold was gone. I counseled with him. I told him I would help him to once more master his own affairs. He swore by the sign of the great bull that he would. But it was not to be. In a quarrel she thrust a knife into the heart he dared her to pierce." And then Rodin says, "And she?" And Mathon responds, "Yes, of course, this was hers." He picked up the scarlet cloth, and Mathon said, Mathon picked up the scarlet cloth, and he says, "In bitter remorse she threw herself into the Euphrates. These 2 loans will never be repaid. The chest tells you, Rodin, that humans in the throes of great emotions are not safe risks for the gold lender." So that's a good thing to highlight. And then Mathon continues and he says, "Here, now this is different." Mathon reached for a ring carved of ox bone, and Mathon says, "This belongs to a farmer. I buy the rugs of his women. The locusts came and they had not food. I helped him, and when the new crop came, he repaid me. Later he came again and told of strange goats in a distant land as described by a traveler. They had long hair so fine and soft it would weave into rugs more beautiful than any ever seen in Babylon. He wanted a herd, but he had no money, so I did lend him gold to make the journey and bring back goats. Now his herd is begun, and next year I shall surprise the lords of Babylon with the most expensive rugs it has been their good fortune to buy. Soon I must return his ring. He doth insist on repaying promptly." And so Rodin says, "Some borrowers do that?" And then Mathon says, "If they borrow for purposes that bring money back to them, I find it so. But if they borrow because of their indiscretions, I warn thee to be cautious if thou wouldst ever have thy gold back in hand again." And Rodin says, "Tell me about this," requested Rodin, picking up a heavy gold bracelet inset with jewels in rare designs. And then Mathon says, "The women do appeal to my good friend," bantered Mathon. So I'm guessing that the heavy gold bracelet inset with jewels and rare designs, I guess that it's understood between the 2 of them that that is something that would be owned by a woman. And so that's why Mathon says, "The women do appeal to my good friend," bantered Mathon. And then Rodin says, "I am so much younger than you," retorted Rodin. So I'm guessing that means that it's okay or it's appropriate for him to be interested. And then Mathon responds, "I grant that, but this time thou dost suspicion romance where it is not." I don't understand. Okay, I don't understand the subtext of what they're saying to each other, but it doesn't really matter. So Mathon says, "The owner of this is fat and wrinkled, and doth talk so much and say so little, she drives me mad. Once they had much money and were my good customers, but ill times came upon them. She has a son of whom she would make a merchant, so she came to me and borrowed gold that he might become a partner of a caravan owner who travels with his camels, bantering in one city, bartering in one city what he buys in another. And he continues, "This man proved a rascal, for he left the poor boy in a distant city without money and without friends, pulling out early while the youth slept. Perhaps when this youth has grown to manhood he will repay. Until then I get no rental for the loan, only much talk. But I do admit the jewels are worthy of the loan." And then Rodin responds, "Did this lady ask thy advice as to the wisdom of the loan?" And Mathon responds, "Quite otherwise. She had pictured to herself this son of hers as a wealthy and powerful man of Babylon. To suggest the contrary was to infuriate her. A fair rebuke I had. I knew the risk for this inexperienced boy, but as she offered security, I could not refuse her. This," continued Mathon, waving a bit of pack rope tied into a knot, "belongs to Nebatur, the camel trader. When he would buy a herd larger than his funds, he brings to me this knot, and I lend to him according to his needs. He is a wise trader. I have confidence in his good judgment, and can lend him freely. Many other merchants of Babylon have my confidence because of their honorable behavior. Their tokens come and go frequently in my token box. Good merchants are an asset to our city, and it profits me to aid them to keep trade moving, that Babylon be prosperous." Mathon picked out a beetle carved in turquoise and tossed it contemptuously. "A bug from Egypt. The lad who owns this does not care whether I ever receive back my gold. When I reproach him, he replies, 'How can I repay when ill fate pursues me? You have plenty more.'" So that's the borrower, what he says. So then Mathon continues, "What can I do? The token is his father's, a worthy man of small means, who did pledge his land and herd to back his son's enterprises. The youth found success at first, and then was overzealous to gain great wealth. His knowledge was immature. His enterprises collapsed. Youth is ambitious. Youth would take cuts to wealth and the desirable things for which it stands. So cuts, meaning shortcuts. To secure wealth quickly, youth often borrows unwisely. Youth, never having had experience, cannot realize that hopeless debt is like a deep pit into which one may descend quickly, and where one may struggle vainly for many days. It is a pit of sorrow and regrets, where the brightness of the sun is overcast, and night is made unhappy by restless sleeping. Yet I do not discourage borrowing gold. I encourage it. I recommend it if it for a wise purpose. I myself made my first success as a merchant with borrowed gold. Yet what should the lender do in such a situation? The youth is in despair and accomplishes nothing. He is discouraged. He makes no effort to repay. My heart turns against depriving the father of his land and cattle." And then Rodin says, "You tell me much that I'm interested to hear," ventured Rodin, "but I hear no answer to my question. Should I lend my 50 pieces of gold to my sister's husband? They mean much to me." And then Mathon responds, "Thy sister is a sterling woman, whom I do much esteem. Should her husband come to me and ask to borrow 50 pieces of gold, I should ask him for what purpose he would use it. If he answered that he desired to become a merchant like myself and deal in jewels and rich furnishings, I would say, 'What knowledge have you of the ways of trade? Do you know where you can buy at lowest cost? Do you know where you can sell at a fair price?' Could he say yes to these questions?" And then Rodin says, "No, he could not," Rodin admitted. "He has helped me much in making spears, and he has helped some in the shops." And what's his name? Rodin and Mathon. So Mathon responds, Then I would say to him that his purpose was not wise. Merchants must learn their trade. His ambition, though worthy, is not practical, and I would not lend him any gold. But supposing he could say, "Yes, I have helped merchants much. I know how to travel to Smyrna and to buy at low cost the rugs the housewives weave. I also know many of the rich people of Babylon, to whom I can sell these at a large profit." Then I would say, "Your purpose is wise, and your ambition honorable. I shall be glad to lend you the 50 pieces of gold, if you can give me security that they will be returned." I'm going to highlight this whole bit. That's a really good quote. But would he, so Mathon's continuing with this hypothetical situation, but would he say, if he were to say, "I have no security other than that I am an honored man and will pay you well for the loan," then I would reply, "I treasure much each piece of gold. Were the robbers to take it from you as you journeyed to Smyrna, or take the rugs from you as you returned, then you would have no means of repaying me, and my gold would be gone. Gold, you see, Rodin, is the merchandise of the lender of money. It is easy to lend. If it is lent unwisely, then it is difficult to get back. The wise lender wishes not the risk of the undertaking, but the guarantee of safe repayment. 'Tis well," he continued, "to assist those that are in trouble. 'Tis well to help those upon whom fate has laid a heavy hand. 'Tis well to help those who are starting, that they may progress and become valuable citizens. But help must be given wisely, lest, like the farmer's ass, in our desire to help, we but take upon ourselves the burden that belongs to another." Again I wandered from thy question, Rodin, but hear my answer. Keep thy 50 pieces of gold. What thy labor earns for thee, and what is given thee for a reward, is thine own, and no man can put an obligation upon thee to part with it, unless it do be thy wish. If wouldst lend it so that it may earn thee more gold, then lend with caution, and in many places. I like not idle gold, and even less I like too much of risk. And then he asks Rodin, "How many years hast thou labored as a spear maker?" And Rodin says, "Fully 3. And Mathon asks, "How much besides the king's gift hast saved?" And Rodin answers, 3 gold pieces. And then Mathon answers, "Each year that thou hast labored, thou hast denied thyself good things to save from thine earnings 1 piece of gold?" And then Rodin answers, "'Tis as you say," so meaning yes. And then Mathon, then mightiest save in 50 years of labor 50 pieces of gold by thy self-denial. So in other words, he's saying, so if you were to save for 50 years, you'd have 50 gold pieces, basically implying that the gift he got from the king is equivalent to 50 years of savings. And Rodin answers, "A lifetime of labor it would be." And then Mathon, "Thinkest thou thy sister would wish to jeopardize the savings of 50 years of labor over the bronze melting pot, that her husband might experiment on being a merchant?" And then Rodin answers, "Not if I spoke in your words." In other words, not if I put it like that. And then Mathon responds, "Then go to her and say, 3 years I have labored each day except fast days, from morning until night, and I have denied myself many things that my heart craved. For each year of labor and self-denial I have to show 1 piece of gold. Thou art my favored sister, and I wish that thy husband may engage in business in which he will prosper greatly. If he will submit to me a plan that seems wise and possible to my friend Mathon, then I will gladly lend to him my savings of an entire year, that he may have an opportunity to prove that he can succeed. And then that's the end of what Mathon. So all of that is what Mathon is saying that Rodin should say. So then Mathon says to Rodin, "Do that, I say, and if he has within him the soul to succeed, he can prove it. If he fails, he will not owe thee more than he can hope to some day repay." That's a really good quote. I'm going to highlight all of that. This is a really good book. So Mathon continues, "I am a gold lender because I own more gold than I can use in my own trade. I desire my surplus gold to labor for others and thereby earn more gold. I do not wish to take risk of losing my gold, for I have labored much and denied myself much to secure it. Therefore, I will no longer lend any of it where I am not confident that it is safe and will be returned to me. Neither will I lend it where I am not convinced that its earnings will be promptly paid to me. I have told to thee, Rodin, a few of the secrets of my token chest. From them you may understand the weakness of men in their eagerness to borrow that which they have no certain means to repay. From this you can see how often their high hopes of the great earnings they could make if they but had gold are but false hopes they have not the ability or training to fulfill. Thou, Rodin, now have gold which thou shouldst put to earning more gold for thee. Thou art about to become even as I, a gold lender. If thou dost safely preserve thy treasure, it will produce liberal earnings for thee, and be a rich source of pleasure and profit during all thy days. But if thou dost let it escape from thee, it will be a source of constant sorrow and regret as long as thy memory doth last. What desirest thou most of this gold in thy wallet? And Rodin answers, to keep it safe. And Mathon answers, wisely spoken, replied Mathon approvingly. Thy first desire is for safety. Thinkest thou that in the custody of thy sister's husband it would be truly safe from possible loss? And Rodin answers, I fear not, for he is not wise in guarding gold. And Mathon responds, then be not swayed by foolish sentiments of obligation to trust thy treasure to any person. If thou wouldst help thy family or thy friends, find other ways than risking the loss of thy treasure. Forget not that gold slippeth away in unexpected ways from those unskilled in guarding it. As well, so this next I want to understand. As well waste thy treasure in extravagance as let others lose it for thee. In other words, he's saying you may as well waste your money on extravagances as opposed to giving it to other people and having them waste it. And then Mathon asks Rodin, what next after safety dost desire of this treasure of thine? And Rodin responds, that it earn more gold. And Mathon responds, again thou speakest with wisdom. It should be made to earn and grow larger. Gold wisely lent may even double itself with its earnings before a man like you groweth old. If you risk losing it, you risk losing all that it would earn as well. Therefore, be not swayed by the fantastic plans of impractical men who think they see ways to force thy gold to make earnings unusually large. Such plans are the creations of dreamers, unskilled in the safe and dependable laws of trade. Be conservative in what thou expectest to earn, that thou mayest keep and enjoy that treasure. To hire it out with a promise of usurious returns is to invite loss. Seek to associate thyself with men and enterprises whose success is established, that thy treasure may earn liberally under their skillful use and be guarded safely by their wisdom and experience. Thus, mayest thou avoid the misfortunes. Thus mayest thou avoid the misfortunes follow most of the sons of men to whom God sees fit to entrust gold. I think that sentence is missing a word. I think it should read, thus mayest thou avoid the misfortunes which follow most of the sons of men to whom God sees fit to entrust gold. And so then no one's talking now. So when Rodin thanked Mathon for his wise advice, Mathon would not listen, saying, the king's gift shall teach thee much wisdom. If thou wouldst keep thy 50 pieces of gold, thou must be discreet indeed. Many uses will tempt thee, much advice will be spoken to thee. Numerous opportunities to make large profits will be offered thee. The stories from my token box should warn thee, before thou let any piece of gold leave thy pouch, to be sure that thou hast a safe way to pull it back again. Should my further advice appeal to thee, return again. It is gladly given. Ere thou goest, so Mathon continues to say, this is like the last part of the chapter, so Mathon says, ere thou goest, read this, which I have carved beneath the lid of my token box. It applies equally to the borrower and the lender. And it says, better a little caution than a great regret. I'll highlight that. So that is the end of that chapter.